Hello and welcome to Chaplain Chuck. This is my three-part series on grief and loss. They're all standalone, but if you want to understand really what grief is, we talked about the last episode or part, we talked about the different types of grief. All griefs are not the same. We experience grief differently. Don't blame yourself. It's just a journey. We talked about the stages of grief. They used to say they're about 5. Now they're over the years they're saying more like 10. So if you really want to understand what grief is, either because you're a health professional, you could be a psychotherapist, a social worker, a group facilitator for grief groups, for hospice, and you think, gee, I really would like some training to help my patients, definitely check out the first series. I think it'd be helpful, the first part. But you don't need to go that. If that isn't anything that you seek, that's fine. Each of these all of my series are set up to stand alone, okay? So, but my background, just so you know, is grief counseling for many, many years. I've done grief support groups and workshops at meditation centers, retreat centers, schools, and so on. So, and I've currently been doing it for many years at the hospital where I currently work as a chaplain. So anyway, a little bit about me, and we're glad you're here. And if you are suffering, my heart goes out to you. I know how difficult it is. I hope I can be of help to you today. I really do, okay? Information is power. Having some understanding can really help, okay? So anyway, so let's get started. The first slide we're going to have is aspects of life affected by loss. We know our life has changed. Depending on the degree that we love that person and the importance they had in our life. Was it a daily influence? Somebody we just talked to once a year or so at a holiday party might not affect us quite as much. But there is emotional upheaval somewhat. We want to get to a place of less emotions or emotional health. So instead of being stuck in our feelings, we face them. It's never a good idea to drink and self-medicate with food and alcohol and whatever else, trying to suppress those feelings. We really believe in facing them. That's part of my work. It's okay to cry. That's human. We're human, okay? Intense feelings. Some of the intense feelings, like we're going through the checkout line at a grocery store and we feel frozen and numb. We want it to be less intense. If a song comes on the radio that reminds us of our loved one, we don't want to, freeze up, just, oh yeah, okay, I'm remembering them right now, and I feel sad, for instance. Negative emotions become less guilt and peace. We talked about the stages of bargaining, and guilt was one of them. Bargaining and guilt we need to move past that if we can, work that out, address that, okay? Good idea to talk to someone, go to a grief support group and try to work on that. That's a process we need to work through, okay? Number 2, mentally stressed. So the other one was emotion, now we're mentally, our mind, okay? What's going on with our mind? We'd like to have a healthy mind. Sometimes we think we're going crazy. We go through any kind of disruption in our life, and certainly loss. We really feel like we're losing it. So we want an increased perspective, kind of put things in order if we can. Memory issues, concentration is better. That's so important. Memory issues, concentration is better. We focus on one thing at a time. Be kind to ourselves. We're going through some emotional upheaval right now. We're stressed. It affects the mind, our clarity of thinking. Concentration, so we want to get our concentration better. Don't beat yourself up if you can't remember where you left the keys. Things like that happen with more frequency quite often when we have loss. Very, very common. There's nothing wrong with you if that's happening. Nightmares. Some people have a lot of nightmares, have trouble sleeping, And so they start decreasing in frequency. You know, your whole life we're always going to have nightmares, but they start decreasing in frequency. It's not going to keep you up all night or you can't sleep. Hopefully you can work on that. And there's a lot of things we'll do. We'll talk about how to do that, talk about coping, okay? Poor physical state. We want to get to a place of physical health. Appetite, sleep patterns. Some people, they just forget to eat. I know when I grieve, I just don't want to eat. I've noticed that when I'm at the hospital, quite often if somebody is in the process of transitioning out of this life, we'll offer a courtesy cart. Spiritual care will bring them a basket with different foods and fruit and so on. More times than not, even when we bring it, nobody even touches it because they're just too sad. They just don't feel like eating, you know. Sleep patterns, same thing. Okay, have trouble sleeping through the night, so we're trying to get those to normalize. Social life, a lot of times people withdraw. I know some people in my own family, when there was a death, for instance, of a spouse, they noticed they weren't getting invited to a lot of the functions again, like couples things. And we'll go into that. People feel uncomfortable, what to say, what not to say. We like to have healthy relationships, so there might require an extra push on your part to really reach out and talk to people and not isolate and just stay at home type of thing. So really work on having at least a few healthy relationships, at least one while you're going through this period. Grief support groups too. I've seen many friendships bond in my grief support groups. It's really great. So some people find new friends. Fatigue, energy returns for socializing, because sometimes we just don't have the energy. Our loss just zaps our energy, certainly our zest. So energy returns for socializing, which is a wonderful thing. Sometimes we have to kind of force ourselves to get out. Well, we'll get into that later. Okay, how to invite someone if they're grieving. Social life, we'd like to have, again, healthy relationships, about the last one. Rushing into new ones, sometimes we're so desperate we'll just hang out with anyone or whatever, but we'd like to have a sense of maturity with those. Self-confidence, more confidence, we'd like that. Isolation, find comfort with others. Boy, I have that. We have somebody who had a major loss and reached out to her and you know, very involved with the family over the years. And no, I just can't get together and eat with anyone right now. It's too heavy. I just don't want to be around. And you know, and that's not. I mean, if that's where you're at, okay. But we want to eventually get to a point where we're past that and we start working through that. It's just not healthy. Spiritually numb. I've had people who said they were they haven't been to their place of worship because they didn't feel close to God anymore, and it came up in the workshops. They felt God had taken their loved one. They were angry at God. They were questioning their faith. And all of that. So we want to get to a place of spiritual health if we can. Because some people have had breakthroughs in my grief support groups because that they've really had breakthroughs, you know, and they are now going back to their place of worship and participating and in the services sometimes. And it's nice to see that they've been able to address what was between them and their higher power and their spiritual life. We call it some of the dark night of the soul and reconnecting with the faith community. That's something that can really happen. It's early in the morning, so I'm having my coffee. I'm sorry, but anyway, yeah. Get a cup of coffee for yourself, right? Depleted, spiritually you feel depleted. You know, your energy level, your well-being, your relationship with God. If you have that, you know, becoming depleted, we want, the way to get that back really is spiritual practices, and we'll talk about this, you know, spiritual journaling, write God a letter, you know, write anyone a letter, you know, just write yourself a letter. What are you feeling? What are your thoughts? It's really important. Becoming empowered through prayer, meditation. I filmed a segment a little bit ago this morning, where our Muslim staff and some patients or families will actually come into the chapel throughout the day. And when I do shift change, they come in and they have their prayer mat and they're praying and for about 10-15 minutes. And that's, doing those types of practices can really help. I know when my uncle passed away, my aunt and uncle were very, very close. She started going to morning prayer services at her church. And she never did that before, but now that gave her community, gave her company, and an increased prayer life she needed, okay? So, acceptance and moving on. So that was aspects of life. Now this is about taking action, okay? Let me do this first, okay? So moving on doesn't mean, this is something that's really, we'll talk about this a little bit later. This is something that's very hard for people. They'll say, okay, just move on, forget about them. Oh, they've been gone a year. It's time to move on with your life, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that we stop feeling the loss. I had trouble with that. When my mother died, I felt like if I was moving on or too quickly or starting to enjoy my life, that meant I didn't love her. I don't know why. I was a good son. I was really there with her. She's the main reason I actually became a chaplain, because of the experience I had with chaplains when she was getting ready to go through transition. And so it really can make a difference, okay? So we can stop feeling the loss. We believe life is fair. Moving on doesn't mean that we don't still feel the loss. I still miss people that I love. I think about them all the time, actually. It doesn't necessarily mean we believe life is fair. Certainly I'm with a young mother who loses her child where I work. How come other people say, oh, how could my dad die at 52 or my wife at 48, or all the different things that I see, and they think, oh, that shouldn't happen. And again, we try not to do shoulds. We just try to accept what is. And I'm filming a workshop called Radical Acceptance to help us with that too. I've got part 1 already up. So, and that doesn't mean that we never get down. It doesn't mean we never get down or stressed. Okay. But we pick ourselves up, get off the couch, participate in life, okay? Moving on now, this is what it means, what it does mean. It means that we treasure our memories, and initially after the loss of a loved one, when we think of them, it's probably not treasured, beautiful memories, holidays, wonderful conversations we had, whatever. Probably not that, but we'll start, over time, we will start treasuring the memories, and look for that and try to do that. When you're ready, look at some photo albums, some movies. Moving on does mean that we form new relationships, because we might want to replace that person who might have had a huge place in our life if we certainly live with them, if we were living with a parent and they died, or a spouse or a child. And try to find something to replace that would be really good. Then we can try new things. It's interesting. You could take up painting, drawing, sewing, pickleball. There's just so many things you can really do. It's really limitless if you think about it. But because we're grieving, we don't see it. It's just so hard to see it. We just think, oh, I'm never going to get better. Life is just a dark wall. That we can try to accept our loss. It does mean that we can try to accept our loss, okay? Because we want to get to that place of acceptance. That's the final stage of grief. That we can forgive ourselves and others. This is a big thing that we do in grief support and in grief therapy as well. There's often not forgiving the doctor made a bad call, the hospital did something we didn't like. All of those things happen. It's really something. And that we can forgive them and forgive ourselves too, because quite often people are beating themselves up so bad. And I think, what did you not do? You were the caregiver for your loved one, and everything you shared all the time. What more could you have done? And more times than not, I can't think of anything. Then why are you beating yourself up? Right? You know, they were lucky to have you. You know. So some of the things is we talk about facing the wave. Sometimes there's something called facing the wave where people say, oh my gosh, it was like a blue wave of sadness. It's just not a beautiful ocean wave, but a blue wave of sadness. It just comes over them and just knocks them down. And you think, some people say, I can't even breathe. It's so acute. And then I said, you know what, just be with it. That the best thing is probably just to be with it. And you could certainly pray and meditate and whatever, go for a walk while you're having it. You could try, but sometimes the best thing is just sit on the couch and just take some breath. That's really good too. I work with patients on it. Just breathe in and out. Just let it go. You'll be surprised the stress that comes out with just a few deep breaths. It's really wonderful. We talk about no shoulds, self-acceptance. And people do that in the group. Oh, I shouldn't be crying. I shouldn't feel this way. Or somebody from another group will say, oh no, you know what, you shouldn't. And I say, oh, okay, that's the one thing I call, I stop the speaking, the sharing right away in the grief support group. I'll say, no, there's no shoulds. Don't ever say should. Say, I think this might help you, instead of, no, you shouldn't do that, or whatever, okay? Group support, formal and informal, is absolutely wonderful. Exercise, walk in natures, those are all wonderful things. It can be very, very helpful. No matter how you feel, get up, show up, and never give up. No matter how you feel, get up, show up, and never give up. Somebody brought that to the support group. And how to be comfortable around others when grieving, effective communication. So let's see what that's about, okay? But we have to understand joy and loss are part of life, and that we do really need to reach out. And we have to believe in a higher power, that God is good even when life isn't. That God walks with us through our pain. He is walking with us through our pain. Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a journey, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness, nor a lack of faith. Grief is the price of love. Isn't that beautiful? And that actually was somebody from my grief group brought that in. So Chaplain Chuck and I share this with the group, and I said, yeah, I make copies for everybody, as I remember. It was a while ago, but yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. So now, let's do some participation. A good way to work through grief is sharing our story. What would you like to share and pass on? So if you would like to get your pencils and papers out, I got to figure out, this channel is new. I think there's a way I can have like a place I can send these worksheets and materials so that you can actually use them. I think I set up an email site, but we'll look at that, okay? If I figure that out, we'll put that there. But what would you like to share or pass on to others about your loved one? So think about that. This is a little bit more for a grief group type thing or a workshop. Name some of the fears you have about facing a life without your loved one. What are some fears you have? Not being invited to social events maybe, or whatever, I don't know. But those are things to think about, okay? And you're watching this on YouTube, so you can always, pause this and write it down, What steps have you taken, if any, to heal and move on? What steps have you taken? And of course, there's a comment section. If you would like to leave a comment too, that's fine. That's great. I'll try to get back to you, okay? So a good way to work through grief is sharing our stories. So describe your relationship with a higher power, God, a spiritual teacher, or a mentor. Some people are very close to their spiritual teacher, their rabbi, their pastor. That's really good too, okay? So think about that. Have you drawn on this since your loss? Sometimes people become almost like we were talking about spiritually numb. They just forget and they don't do it, okay? But that's definitely something, if you feel comfortable doing that, feel it can benefit, yeah, absolutely. Set up an appointment with a spiritual counselor at your place of worship or whatever. And 5, have you reached out to someone since your loss? Isolating is one of the things. I've had people come that say they've been at home for 2 months, haven't really gone out except maybe to buy groceries, because and they came to a meeting because they felt desperate and they knew they needed to do something, that their life was not in a good place or heading in a good trajectory. And we're glad to help, you know. There's a lot of grief support groups now. Check it out, look around, you know, go online, there's a lot. Your church might even have one. Our church just actually started one in January. We never had one before. We had a 6-session workshop, but we never actually had a drop-in coffee, they call it, grief cafe or something. Have you reached out to someone since your loss? How, based on what you have learned today, is that something you might do? So put that on your goal list for the day, or things that you want to think about, okay? Reaching out to someone since your loss. Also, if you're getting the immediate impact of that loss, the thing to remember too is that there are other people who might be suffering too. Matter of fact, there probably are. And so sometimes just being with them helps your mood, okay? All right, so that was it for our workshop for today. Join me for the next part of the series. It's called The Mind and the Soul. And I'm thinking of even having a 4th part where I'm not talking about the mind and the soul, how to get those in tandem working and stuff, but I might just go full bore spirituality, higher power, and part 4. It might be a 4-part series, but we'll see. But thank you so much for joining us today. We're glad you were here. And again, if you're grieving, I'm sorry for your loss. And hopefully we gave you some tips of how to move forward, okay, and how to cope. Thank you.